if such factors are not addressed and we are just all keeping our eyes on interest rates, either they are lowered or unlowered, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't address the appearing condition that you're losing your purchasing power. It doesn't indicate any narrative of change. Beth Hammack, the president of the Federal Reserve of Kenya, she had an interview with CNBC just, I think, hours ago. It's important to try to understand that she came up and said that there's no need for more rate cuts in the next coming month. And she also came up and claimed that the cut that was taken in this month of December, it was unnecessary. It's one or the other. She tried to understand why she's right and why she's wrong. If you're interested in such kind of video, please consider liking and subscribing. So now we'll try to understand, to break this down, and why is this necessary, or it isn't really necessary at all. Why it doesn't even make sense for one or the other. Let's begin with try to understand why the Fed start cutting down rates. One or the other, try to understand. Fed was triggered to start cutting down rates. That was when unemployment started rising. It rose to almost at the beginning of September, I believe, or at the ending of September, it was around 4.3%, where it rose to almost 4.4 or 4.5. As we speak of right now, it's almost 4.6%. We just had over 3 consistent Fed cuts in September. In 3 meetings, we had almost 3 cuts in September. However, we should also try to understand that the Fed's initiative or order, one or the other, is to keep unemployment low, and realize that to keep the dollar in to avoid also to avoid inflation, one or the other. However, her biggest fear was inflation. However, the US inflation came out around 2.7%. Well, we saw the same thing in the UK, where inflation has gone down in one or the other. But you try to understand, why is inflation going down one or the other? See, many of us, we might say, well, the Fed did it and the economy is doing well. Well, the Bank of the UK is doing well because they did their levels to lower inflation. But you try to understand that it's either consumers are contracting or contradicting with spending. They no longer feel like they should be spending, otherwise conducting themselves on saving, because one or the other is they are seeing themselves like they are always kind of I would say they are seeing anytime they're gonna be losing their jobs. Just to understand how big this is, because she said that her biggest fear was inflation, the hedging inflation, which is also right in one or the other. However, I'm trying to show you why in this, all of it, either cutting rates or not cutting rates, doesn't matter, because the global economy is actually still going down, regardless the US economy, regardless wherever you are in. There's a slow in the growth of the economy. One of the biggest factor that driving that will be indicating as the lack of productivity. All over the world today, productivity is low. If you see why the US stock market is doing great and why it's seeing itself like all-time high, and one or the other, all standing by one company, which indicates that maybe most of them, they call it Nvidia, a cheap company. However, that all indicates why AI is becoming a booming thing in the US, and the high investment going in the AI without results being seen in time also leaves the market in kind of scarce. In one or the other, you should try to understand that a few economists believe that the US economy should be in a recession if it wasn't for the AI investment in the US stock market. See, we used to predict the economy maybe through stocks if the stocks are doing good. However, there's a difference that has been coming between the macroeconomy and the US stocks in one way. And sometimes when I speak of the macroeconomy, I speak of the ground economy. Sometimes I speak of the me and you economy, or the way we vigilantes, how we find ourselves in this kind of economy today. We should try to understand that she came up and said that the last cut of December was unnecessary in one way or the other. And it was kind of unneeded. I just wanted to look at the job report, or the unemployment, how unemployment has been rising. We should try to understand, in the month of October, almost 100,000 jobs were lost. However, these numbers will lack the data of October in one way or the other. We should try to understand that actually this was September, sorry. October we lack the actual data, but the addition between October and November, almost 41,000 jobs were lost, and 64,000 jobs were attained. In one way or the other, you should try to understand that the Fed cutting down interest rates is trying to, I'm going to give you an example. Have you ever had someone who's suffering from cancer and the medication he's being given just to make him to feel okay, but it's not a cure? I'm trying to bring such a kind of example, but this is how you can relate to today's economy. You should try to understand that stimulus or keeping the borrowing costs low without productivity, you're still gonna have the same thing. The low unemployment, the lack of consumers, because also consumers today are contradicting. That's why you're seeing inflation going down. Inflation, the only way in this kind of economy why inflation could go down, if consumers start contradicting, if consumers stop their spending, if consumers feel like they no longer need to be doing the actual spending they should be doing. And one of the major causes why consumers stop spending, when they lack savings, when they have fear of losing their jobs, that in one way or the other you see inflation doing great. It's the same thing how we count the GDP growth. When you see the GDP growth of an economy doing good, trust me, there's a percentage that in that GDP that shows that the government borrowed the money that's used to stimulate itself into the economy. What you call growth in actual sense is not actual growth. Today, it's a system that's designed for you to look at the Feds, why the Fed should cut rates. However, the more through the cutting or today they end the tightening, quantitative tightening through quantitative easing. For those who don't understand quantitative tightening, that means the Fed is trying its level best to remove money through the economy so that it will stabilize the currency, let's say the dollar. Quantitative easing, that means the Fed is going to be stimulating the economy in one or the other to boost the economy through, let's say, buying treasuries, its own treasury, that means printing actual money or injecting money straight through the economy. If you don't understand such factors, you should try to understand that in good or bad, regardless either they are cutting interest rates or they are tightening interest rates, we're gonna be seeing more loss, more unemployment rising. You're gonna be seeing a lot of what we'll be calling one or the other, cutting rates or raising rates. It's not gonna save the U.S. economy. If they don't come out and they address the U.S. spending, if Trump and the tariffs are not really conducting well the economy, because if you ask the result of the how tariffs have been impacted to the U.S. economy, is so negative. You asked about the 2,000 dividend that Trump promised to the rest of the U.S. citizens, has a payback check, one or the other. There's no real actual data to back it up. There's no real actual work to show that the actual changes that took place, there was an actual impact. To understand why the $2,000 dividend felt like another top, almost in revenue collected around 265 billion US dollars in simple terms, not even a trillion. To make a stimulus of $2,000 to, let's say, 150 million people, let's say those are the actual taxpayers, okay? You need over 300 billion US dollars. And that math doesn't add up in one or the other. That doesn't catch up. See, there are things that politicians will need you to be seeing or to be looking at in one or the other, that, yeah, we are doing great, the economy is doing great, but you done actual sense. Just let me know in the comments section how you feel like about what the economy. We're just trying to share ideologies, because there are things that the economy always try to show you, like, in one day or the other, or let's say politicians one day. Because one of the main reasons why Trump came out with the $2,000 dividend was to show, because the Republicans were losing their voting power to the Democrats. This has been coming for years, one or the other, depending who's in power. Trust me, politicians are there to spend. The government don't address how they are spending and how they are cut their costs of spending. We just had the shutdown in October between Democrats and Republicans. That's why we don't have the data of October. If such factors are not addressed, if the government expenditure is not addressed, then I promise you, there's no return in the... Actually, as I speak right now, the $38 trillion of US debt, that's almost 125% of its GDP, or 130% of its GDP ratio, one or the other. If such factors are not addressed, and we are just all keeping our eyes on interest rates, either they are lowered or unlowered, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't address the appearing condition that you're losing your purchasing power. It doesn't indicate any narrative of change. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more. If you just love this video and how you saw the content, let me know what you think about everything. And yeah, thank you for watching.